a beloved store owner the victim of a brazen attack,
The shopping center would have been teeming with people.
leaving his family filled with sorrow and pain.
He'd been stabbed, as it turned out, about 8 times. At least one stab wound went through the heart. That was the fatal wound. Something like this can happen almost right under your nose.
A critical clue was left behind.
The biggest piece of evidence they had was the hat.
It would put police on the trail of a serial predator.
He had been committing similar crimes.
The dedicated team of investigators vowed never to rest until they found the key to cracking the case.
It's been a game changer, really. It's pretty amazing what we can do.
Hi, I'm Nancy O'Dell. Today's Crime Exposé takes us to San Diego, California. It was here that 61-year-old Frank Botts, a well-respected shop owner and father of 3, was viciously stabbed to death in his own store. The boldness of the crime was even more unsettling and left the entire community on edge. No one knew for certain if it had been a targeted attack or if the ruthless killer would strike again.
Saturday, April 2nd, 1:30 p.m. It was a beautiful spring afternoon over 4 decades ago when customers shopping at a local mall made a horrific discovery inside Frank Botts' gift store.
Some customers came in and there was no one to wait on them. So that's what eventually prompted them to go to the back room and find Frank's body. The people didn't necessarily check his pulse or anything, but you could tell he was dead. He was still, he didn't move.
The terrified customers immediately notified police, and within minutes, officers raced into the store.
He was in the back office. He was face down on top of a box. He was obviously dead.
Could the officers tell how he had died?
You could obviously see that he'd been stabbed several times.
Detectives scanned the store for clues.
His wallet was gone through, money was missing, money clip was missing.
It looked as if the attack had started and ended in the back room of the store.
Several boxes were overturned, papers were strewn about.
Officers continued scanning the scene.
They also found something very interesting. They found a hat that apparently was discarded by the back door.
What did the hat look like?
Kind of a tam o'shanter style hat that had been left behind at the scene of the crime.
It was like a cap, like you might see on a golfer or something similar. Not the usual type of hat, like a baseball cap that people would wear.
Detectives swept the front of the shop for any evidence.
There was also a cash drawer. The cash register was open. Money was gone. And actually, there were a couple of checks in the cash drawer that had a partial bloody fingerprint.
Investigators hoped they would be a crucial piece of evidence.
Now, we know obviously that had to have occurred after Mr. Botts was stabbed. If we could identify that print, obviously we'd know who probably the killer is.
On the glass display case, forensic specialists located another fingerprint that didn't belong to Frank Botts.
It was a partial fingerprint.
And why did that print stand out to investigators?
It was on the top of a glass cabinet at the far end of the shop, which is not where a customer would normally go.
The autopsy report brought the tragedy of the crime front and center.
Mr. Botts was stabbed about 8 times, and at least one of the stab wounds went into his heart, penetrated his heart.
It was clear the 61-year-old Marine Corps veteran had struggled with his killer.
There were stab wounds on both the front and the back. There were also defensive wounds on one of the hands.
How violent was the fight that led to Frank's murder?
It was extremely vicious because of the number of stab wounds. And it's unlike TV, you don't just drop down and die. It takes several minutes to bleed out. I'm sure he was frightened, and I'm sure he fought hard to save his life.
Detectives fanned out to find if anyone had heard the attack.
We don't have any reports of yelling, fighting, things like that.
Police believe the killer had used an alleyway to escape without being seen.
What's interesting is there was a little service corridor behind Frank Bott's shop, and it was not open to the public, but it did, it facilitated deliveries, things like that.
Based on the small amount of money that had been taken, detectives weren't convinced the crime had been a robbery gone wrong.
We're definitely not talking about any amount that would be worth taking somebody's life. I think he had a $50 money clip. He had some money on his person, and then there was maybe another 100 or 200 in the cash register. The checks weren't taken. So, you're talking an infinitesimal loss.
Which made authorities have to consider an ominous possibility that Frank Botts knew his killer.
The evidence was so strong of a robbery. Maybe the suspect pulled a knife and forced him to go in the back of the room.
"61-year-old Frank Botts had been stabbed to death in his gift shop at College Grove Shopping Center. The married father of 3 grown children had been a beloved member of the community.
Mr. Botts was the kind of person that every community needs, and he was very active in his community. I mean, the list goes on and on. He was just really an upstanding guy. There's just not enough good things you can say about this man.
Owning his own store had always been a dream of his, and Frank took pride in his work.
It was just a gift shop. It sold trinkets, knickknacks, things like that. I think it was a secondary source of income for him, along with probably his pension from the military. And he was well known among all the shop owners. He was just a nice guy.
The store was situated in a busy section of the shopping center.
It's multi-level. I'd say 60, 70 shops maybe. Mr. Botts was right next to a bank. He was on the lower level.
Due to the small amount of money the killer had taken, investigators wondered if the scene had been staged to make it look as if Frank's death had been the result of a botched robbery. Detectives theorized the 61-year-old shop owner had been targeted, and they focused in on those closest to him.
What they did was the good old-fashioned knock on doors, talk to people.
They questioned family, friends, and former coworkers looking for a lead.
They went through about 50 to 60 names.
But after an intense investigation, detectives were unable to find anyone who would have wanted to harm Frank.
He had no known enemies. Everybody liked him. He didn't gamble. He didn't owe anybody any money.
So where did that leave the investigation?
Well, the investigators in this case didn't really have even a starting point.
But now police became convinced that Frank had tragically lost his life over just a few $100s.
The evidence was so strong of a robbery.
News of this senseless attack alarmed the community.
Things like this just didn't happen in 1977. They were very unusual. San Diego was basically a small town that got really big. Even today, we're still low crime. But this particular incident definitely stood out.
And a witness quickly came forward with a tip.
We have one witness who apparently saw him talking to a very young African-American male around 1 o'clock.
Detectives asked the witness for a detailed description of the suspect.
The witness described a young African-American male, and we're talking about late teens, even mid-teens maybe, average height and weight.
The witness also reported the suspect had been wearing a distinct gray cap.
It was kind of a longshoreman's type hat. That's the way you would best describe it. It was like a cap, like you might see on a golfer or something similar.
The hat had turned into a promising clue.
The biggest piece of evidence they had was the hat.
So they knew that this was something that didn't belong there. It was something they felt that the perpetrator was wearing during the commission of this crime. And so certainly anything left behind from a suspect is something that we really want to take a close look at.
Images of the hat were released to the media.
They actually featured that in a newspaper to try to solicit tips from the public.
Police worked overtime to run down the lead.
The officers put in a considerable amount of work to track down the manufacturer, the distributor, and about how many hats were sold in the San Diego area going a few months back.
Meanwhile, they compared the prints left at the scene to numerous suspects.
They tested a number of suspects, all local creeps and robbers and people with criminal histories.
It was a grueling investigation.
It consisted of taking those prints and comparing them to all the prints at the scene. And that's a very laborious process, and it takes a long time. But I would say that these investigators hit this case very hard. They put a ton of work into it. They just didn't have the right info to close it.
So at that point, what did law enforcement need to push the case forward?
They had to have, back then, a suspect to compare the print to. They couldn't just put it into a computer like we can nowadays.
The investigation slowly reached a standstill.
It's like a fire, it kind of dies through lack of oxygen. They ran out of fingerprints to check. They couldn't come up with any more suspects. There were no more leads.
Detectives had to consider a troubling possibility that Frank's killer might remain a free man.
They do one horrible, heinous crime, and then they stop and they blend back into society. They're your neighbor. They go to church with you. They are in the grocery store next to you. And we're getting those people now that we never were able to get before because they only do it once.
But the hunt for a killer would put officers in harm's way.
This individual was actually shot by police during the commission of a very similar crime.
As a cop, I've always thought that bad guys are bad guys and they never quit.
As the years went by, a new team of investigators took a close look at Frank Bott's unsolved homicide.
When you examined Frank's case, did you develop a theory of how the crime unfolded?
We don't really know. Obviously, at some point, he was in the front office and he ended up in the back. So maybe the suspect pulled a knife and forced him to go in the back of the room. Maybe the suspect went back there and Frank followed him back there. We just don't know.
With crucial advances in DNA technology, they looked to the unique hat left behind at the scene.
My goal is to try to collect any DNA that might be present inside the hat from the person who was wearing that item. And in this case, I had a discussion with the investigator, and my understanding was testing had already been conducted using those traditional methods, and they weren't able to get enough DNA to do a comparison or get the profile into a database.
Detective Ryan found a new system called MVAC that had been transforming forensic science.
How exactly does the MVAC system work?
An MVAC is a wet vacuum DNA collection instrument. Kind of like if you wanted to get your carpet clean, you might vacuum the carpet, and that's going to pick up some items. But if you really wanted to deep clean it, you'd use a steam cleaner. Well, the MVAC is kind of like that steam cleaner.
She analyzed the hat for the killer's DNA.
I'm trying to collect any of the DNA from the inner band of the hat along with inside the hat.
Did it provide you with a DNA profile?
In the end, what I found was there was a partial DNA profile. That means instead of getting results at all 24 areas that I'm looking at, I only obtained, a portion or a part of those, probably due to the low level of DNA or the degradation.
It was a disappointing setback, but investigators had another tool at their fingertips.
There's also a brand new tool called AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System, that allows us to check fingerprints. And it's extremely sensitive. It's basically a high-powered computer that checks all unknown prints against massive databases, federal, state, local.
They entered all of the unknown fingerprints left at the scene into the database, and one print in particular led them to a name.
The hit was on a glass towards the back of the shop, and the hit came back to a man named Norman Jones.
Investigators dug into Jones' background.
He had a long, lengthy criminal history of various crimes, auto theft, burglary, and in particular, he seemed to like shopping centers as his primary targets. So obviously, he looks like a good suspect to us. We just have to develop a little bit more physical evidence to tie him into the case.
Detectives learned as a serial robber, Norman Lamont Jones had spent most of his life in and out of jail, but his crime spree came to an end when he was killed in an officer-involved shooting.
He committed a robbery at the Fashion Valley Mall and got about $1,000. And because it takes a while to get from the store to your getaway car, police were able to respond. They surrounded him. They told him to put his gun down. He didn't. And he got shot about 15 times.
The DNA evidence from the Fashion Mall robbery had been submitted into evidence.
Because it was an officer-involved shooting, that evidence was saved. So we had the clothing that he wore the night he was shot and killed. And on that clothing was a lot of blood. We were able to take that blood from the shirt and the clothing and use that as a reference sample for his DNA.
And when they compared Jones' DNA to the profile found on the hat, it was also a match.
It was definitely his hat. And we also found some of his DNA under Frank's fingernails.
Detectives were disappointed they would never be able to question Norman Jones about that fateful afternoon when Frank Botts lost his life.
It would be nice to know how he planned it, how he thought he would execute it, anything else.
It was an emotional moment when detectives shared the news with Frank's family.
They were very happy that they were able to, number one, they were able to finally know what happened. And number two, they were very grateful that we didn't give up on the case. Even decades later, it shows that we care, that the department's working for them.
I think it's pretty amazing what we can do with DNA now.
Armed with Norman Jones' fingerprints and DNA, detectives examined every unsolved homicide in the San Diego area, trying to connect him to another violent attack. But so far, they have been unable to link him to any other crime. And now, it's time for today's Safety Spotlight. One of the best security measures a business owner can take is installing an alarm system and video surveillance. Oftentimes, just seeing a camera or a sign that they are on the premises is enough to deter criminals. And if you are robbed, safety experts recommend you try to avoid engaging in a physical confrontation if at all possible. And finally, check with your local security system provider. Most offer free security assessments. I'm Nancy O'Dell. For all of us here at Crime Exposé, please join us next time and stay safe.